Hey everybody, it's Holden Shinola here. Just doing a little post-election video. One of the main reasons I want to do this video is just to keep this out of my thoughts for the weekend. Last thing I want to talk about during thoughts for the weekend is the election. It's a couple days past. Everyone's going to be sick to death of hearing about it anyway. So I just thought I'd get this done now, and that way I can spend more time on this topic and not clog up the thoughts for the weekend with all the other stories that I want to share and bring to you. So one of my first thoughts about this is, after the last year and a half, 2 years or so, or 4 years if you're Barack Obama, of campaigning for President of the United States, we find that, and after $2 billion being spent between the two, we're right back where we started. The Senate, Democrats got a little bit more control of the Senate. They added a few more seats to their majority, and the Republicans added a few more seats to their majority in the House of Representatives. So we still got gridlock. Obama's still president. We're still heading towards the fiscal cliff. We're still spending more than we bring in. So it looks like, America, you did your job. Many of us felt that it didn't matter who won the election because we're just going to end up in a pretty dire economic situation here in the next few years. The country, we passed the point of no return some time ago. Whether that was during Obama's term or during George Bush's term, we pretty much passed the point of no return quite a while back, and there's no looking back now. When you have as many people as we do in this country that choose not to participate in the system, and I'm talking about political, economic, what have you, you have people who are a large majority of which just like to take. I'm talking about vets or old people on their Social Security. That's never been the point. Veterans earn every dime they get. What little they get, they've earned it by standing up and volunteering themselves for this country, and then basically being lied to and screwed out of everything that they deserve. Seniors, people who have paid into the system all their life, being fed the lies and believing it. You can say they should accept some responsibility for being gullible, thinking that government was the answer, but the fact is they've paid into the system. They ought to be able to get something out of it. We still have a pretty dire economic situation in this country. There's no getting out of it. There's no way you could ever pay off this debt, this national debt, this $16 trillion and counting. It can't be paid off. You just can't do it. It's unstoppable. The only thing left to do is wake up and understand that's a reality. The smartest thing you could ever do at this point in time is to stock food. To stock the things that you'll need to survive, real items that you need to survive. Stockpiling ammunition and guns, once again, I think that makes you a big target to the government. They may not, you may not be as big of a target if all you're stockpiling is food and you're doing it in a smart way that you don't stand out. Maybe don't advertise it so much, and I'm not talking about on YouTube or just, in your neighborhood. There's nothing that'll keep you from becoming a target of the hungry mobs. One of the analogies I was thinking about, I just finished reading Atlas Shrugged, finally, when I was on my vacation 2 weeks ago down in Mexico, and this election makes me more and more understand the concept of going Galt. And I wonder who's going to stand up. Where are we going to find Galt's Gulch? Galt's Gulch, if for those who haven't read the book, I don't know why you haven't, you really need to understand a lot of what's happening right now. Galt's Gulch was the location, the hidden location that the men who stood up and said they'll no longer be victims to these looters in government and society. They will no longer let themselves be slaves to the system and used by the populace for their intelligence and their worth. That they'll only deal with people who seek fair trade of their skills, their time, their labor. No longer will they be subjects to the government who taxes away everything that they work for. So they had this valley they found where they could live in peace and in their own way and follow the Constitution. And they, called it Galt's Gulch, named after John Galt, who was the first man who stood up and said, "No more." And it makes me yearn for a place somewhere in this country where we could possibly find a place to relocate ourselves. I know that's not practical. I know that many people will just stay where they are. I mean, the thought of having to relocate, everybody loves their little piece of the country wherever they're at. If you're in California, you say, why would I ever leave? The weather's beautiful. There's other people who feel like, why would, if you're in Texas, there's no better place. I know people in New Hampshire and Maine and Ohio and Minnesota and all these different states and areas of the country, and they all feel that their place is the best place to be. And that's kind of an important attitude to have, I guess, is maybe Galt's Gulch is wherever you are, whatever, wherever you find yourself. It's a place where you can feel free as a man, but that just sounds like a bunch of malarkey. I love using Joe Biden's terms, malarkey. We don't have any freedom in this country anymore. We have lost that freedom. And I know there's people that will argue, what are you talking about? You don't have any freedom. Okay, well, yeah, compared to people in Ghana or Saudi Arabia or somewhere, we have a lot of freedoms. I'm talking about personal, individual freedom and liberty to live the life that our forefathers guaranteed us in the Constitution. The right to pursue happiness, however we see fit. People asked, why are you libertarian, why aren't you just independent or no party affiliation or whatever? And I think it just had to do with a mindset of standing for a cause that at least preaches individual liberty and responsibility. But you're never going to agree. The only person you're ever going to agree with 100% is yourself. And some of us don't even agree with ourselves 100%. So take it for whatever it's worth. Nobody's ever going to make you 100% happy. It's just the way it goes. So we find ourselves here with Barack Obama as president again. A lot of you know that in 2008, I did vote for Barack Obama. Couldn't stand the man, knew he was lying. But I looked at John McCain and said, it's just going to continue the status quo. I did not want to continue the status quo. I figured a vote for Obama, the way many people felt about him, that I figured it'd be 2, maybe 3 years tops, and this country would be experiencing a revolution. Revolution of the mind, and an actual revolution. Didn't happen. People still haven't woken up. A lot of people have. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people have woken up. I wasn't going to vote for him again this time. I really thought enough people had woken up that there's no way he was going to get reelected. That we'd probably end up with Mitt Romney, and then we would just have to work to hold his feet to the fire and find more and more conservatives, people who understood and feared God in the way they should, understood that we have a sacred duty and honor to keep this country free and make men free in the slavery of government that so many of us now find ourselves. And I say ourselves, I'm not one of them currently. I do have family members that have had to become slaves to the government just to survive. And for all I know, they probably voted for the big government. They see it as safety and they don't understand it's bondage. But I digress. I think if anything, if more and more people don't wake up, if we don't use this election as an opportunity to get more people to wake up, to really start turning the tide, to grow the strength of the Tea Party or whatever you want to call it, the freedom movement in this country, to advance the ideas of Ron Paul, though he's stepping down from all political life, I think he's still going to stand behind the movement and keep the movement going. I think that we all have a sacred honor and a duty to maintain this country, to be patriots. And I'm not talking about the ones that Thomas Paine talked about, the sunny day patriots, the summertime soldiers, people who will stand up, who will try to make a difference. And I think we need to understand that we're not going to make difference at a national level. You must fight for your local governance. And I'm talking at your city, your county, and your state levels. That's the only place you're going to be able to affect real change. Not until you change your states, not until you change your county or your city or your township government will you be able to ever then proceed to move on the federal Leviathan. It's just not going to happen. You have to make the changes locally, starting with yourself, your family, your friends, your neighbors. Until you can change the hearts and the mind of the people around you, you're never going to be able to do anything about the national elections, about the national government, the federal government. Time is short. I'm not even sure we have enough time to do it peacefully. I think we've gone too far over the cliff. I think it's time to fumble for the emergency chute before you hit the rocks below. I think the only outcome down the road is, if this thing doesn't crash and burn, it's just a complete turnover to the state, martial law type situation, dictatorships from here on out. I see this thing going badly. Europe, you look at the stock market today, I saw it down 350 when I left the house. Who knows where it's at right now? Maybe it's leveling off. Maybe the government computers have kicked in, or the Fed computers have kicked in. They start making their purchases to bring the market back up before the close, to keep everybody from panicking, and we're going to keep seeing the printing of money going further and further into debt. They're going to push harder on the accelerator. You're going to see more and more dictate coming down from Obama, executive orders, regulations increasing heavily and more and more heavily. You're not going to see Congress getting in the way and doing anything. You're going to see John Boehner fold. You're going to see McConnell fold. These guys are going to just give in. They're going to try to pick up their little victory here and give away the rest of the farm, which is fine. The sooner we crash this thing, the sooner the thing falls down and collapses, the faster that we can get on the road to true rebuilding of this country. I don't think it survives as a whole. It's too big, it's too diverse. I think the election maps proved it. When you looked at the heat maps where they showed how each county in the nation voted, and you saw how the vast majority of the country was red, and it was just few hot spots in the big urban areas that were blue. And you realize the governance of this country is controlled by the big metropolitan areas. If that doesn't scare you, nothing should, because those of you who live out in the country, in the rural areas, the majority of this country is going to be controlled by the cities. We will all be their slaves. We will be forced to turn over all profit, whether it be monetary or material. If you own a farm, do you think you're going to be allowed to keep producing crops for your own profit? Or are you going to have to turn over all your hard labor, all the work on your farm, turn it over to the government? Because you have to have a heart and take care of the people in the city. You want them to starve to death? This is going to have to be a wake-up call for the nation. I see no other way forward. I don't know how you can continue to push for the growth of government that we've seen in the last 4 years. Keep pushing for another 4 years for that same growth of government. This is the time you need to start hunkering down. You need to start preparing yourself, putting back more food and stuff that you really need to survive. And part of that's going to have to be doing it with your friends and family. And you're just going to have to look out for yourself. When you get yourself in a good position, then you're going to have to start getting your neighbors, your friends, and people in your community up to speed of what's going on. You got to think small. You got to work at your local level first, and then work up through your counties, and then into your state. Forget the national, forget the federal. It makes no difference. They're going to continue to screw us and control us. You know, if anyone has any bright ideas as far as what we're going to do, as far as finding a free land, I don't know. The first sign I hear that Texas is thinking of seceding, I'm moving. I'm going straight to Texas. That's all I've got. SOS out.